What if like 99.9% of your decisions, I mean, from the dark roast coffee you drank this morning to the exact car sitting in your driveway, right down to the person you chose to marry? What if those decisions were actually made by someone else?
Yeah, it genuinely sounds like the premise of a dystopian science fiction movie, right? Like
Right.
the idea that we are essentially passengers in our own lives, just sort of watching the scenery go by while thinking we have our hands on the steering wheel.
It really does. It feels a bit unsettling when you phrase it that way. Because, we all fiercely believe in our own individuality. I know I definitely do.
Oh, totally. We all.
Right. Like if you ask me why I bought my specific running shoes, I will give you a highly rational, bullet-pointed list. I'll tell you it's because I like the specific arch support or the tread pattern or whatever, the breathable mesh. I chose them. Me.
Right, yeah. Your unique preference.
Exactly. But the unseen reality, the reality we are diving into today, is that we are constantly being steered by the invisible currents of social influence. We think we're steering the ship, but we aren't even aware of the ocean currents pushing us along.
Which is, I mean, that's exactly what makes the introduction to Jonah Berger's book, Invisible Influence, so paradigm shifting.
Hmm.
And welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Today we're going to explore how hidden social forces shape almost every aspect of your life entirely without your conscious awareness.
It's just so wild to think about.
It really is. We'll look at the mechanisms behind everything from your romantic preferences to your core moral judgments. And if you're listening to this and you're interested in business, marketing, or entrepreneurship, understanding these concepts is like the ultimate shortcut.
Yeah, it's the secret code.
Exactly. It's how you figure out why consumers actually buy what they buy and how you can authentically position your ideas in a crowded, noisy world.
So to understand just how powerful these invisible forces are, we kind of have to start by establishing our baseline assumption about human nature.
Yeah, the baseline is crucial here.
Because when you or I make a choice, we fundamentally believe that it points inward. We believe our choices act as a mirror, reflecting our personal tastes, our, unique preferences, our individual likes and dislikes.
Right, the I bought it because I like it defense.
Exactly. But the psychological research reveals that there is one specific place where we have a massive gaping blind spot to social influence. And that place is ourselves.
Yeah, and that blind spot is fascinating because of how selectively it operates. The psychological term for this is the introspection illusion.
The introspection illusion. Okay, break that down for us.
So it's a cognitive bias where we wrongly think we have direct insight into the origins of our own mental states, while, treating other people's introspections as completely unreliable.
Like, I know why I did it, but you don't know why you did it.
Exactly. We judge others based on their observable behavior, but we judge ourselves based on our internal thoughts and feelings. And this brings us to a brilliant piece of field research conducted by Jonah Berger and Emily Pronin, which is often referred to as the Palo Alto BMW study.
Okay, set the scene for us, because the location of this study is, like, incredibly important to understanding the results. Palo Alto, California, isn't just any town.
Oh, far from it. I mean, Palo Alto is one of the most affluent places on the entire planet. It's the beating heart of Silicon Valley.
The land of tech billionaires.
Right. You have a population where tech, IPOs, venture capital, and stock options have created this enormous concentrated wealth. It's an environment where seeing a Ferrari or a McLaren at a stoplight is just, a daily occurrence. The local lunch spots are routinely serving meals that run hundreds of dollars. The people living here are at the very top of the socioeconomic pyramid.
Which means, crucially, we are dealing with a demographic that has the financial means to buy virtually whatever they want. They're not constrained by a tight budget in the way most consumers are.
Precisely.
Like, if someone in Palo Alto buys a $60,000 luxury car, it's not because it was the only thing available on the lot. It's because they actively wanted that specific car.
Yeah.
They have total optionality.
And that total optionality makes it the absolute perfect laboratory for studying human choice. So Berger decides to study social influence by looking at the people who drive BMWs in this ultra-wealthy enclave.
Okay, so how does he do it? Does he just call them up?
No, and that's the cool part. Instead of bringing these people into a sterile university lab, which, often changes how people behave, he went to them.
Out in the wild.
Yeah. He spent days biking around the pristine streets of Palo Alto, literally hunting for BMWs like they were Easter eggs.
That's amazing.
He'd check the parking lots of high-end grocery stores, country clubs, corporate tech campuses, just scanning for that telltale shape and logo. And every time he found one, he would take a piece of paper out of his messenger bag and gingerly tuck a survey under the windshield wiper.
I just love that visual. A researcher on a bicycle, desperately hunting for luxury German sedans in the wild. So he left over 100 of these surveys out there. What was the core question he was trying to get these drivers to answer?
So the survey asked these drivers to rate the various factors that influenced their decision to buy a BMW. It started with the functional, rational factors like price, gas mileage, reliability, safety ratings.
The boring, practical stuff.
Right. But then it introduced the social influences, like did your friends' opinions affect your decision? Did you buy it because the car is associated with cool, successful, or high-status people?
Okay. The invisible stuff.
Exactly. But the real genius of the study design was in the repetition. Each respondent had to answer this exact same set of questions twice.
Twice. Why twice?
First, they rated the factors that influenced their own purchase. Then, they had to rate the factors that they believed influenced another person they knew who also drove a BMW.
Oh, wow. So it's a direct comparison. Rate your own brain and then rate your buddy's brain.
Exactly. So, Berger waits for the responses. The first day, the P.O. box is empty. The second day, still nothing. He starts to worry that, the wind blew the envelopes away or the drivers just tossed them as junk mail.
Which, to be fair, is what I would probably do.
Right. But eventually, the self-addressed stamped envelopes start trickling in, and the data they revealed was astonishing. When it came to the functional standard factors, the price, the gas mileage, the engineering, drivers stated that those things mattered equally for themselves and for others.
Okay.
Price had a significant impact on their own purchase, and they assumed it had a significant impact on their friend's purchase.
Which makes logical sense.
Huh.
I mean, even if you are a multimillionaire in Palo Alto, you still understand the concept of value. Nobody wants to feel like they're wasting money or buying an unreliable machine.
Exactly. But the data completely diverged the moment social influence was introduced.
There we go.
Yeah. When assessing the impact of status or the desire to fit in or what their peers thought, the respondents claimed that those factors heavily influenced other people.
Of course they did.
They easily recognized that their peers' tastes shifted based on the societal pressure to look successful. But when evaluating themselves, they claimed social influence had absolute zero effect. It completely vanished from the equation.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's exactly like having garlic breath.
Oh, I like that.
Right. You can smell it immediately on everyone else in the room. Right. You walk in and think, wow, someone had the garlic knots. But you can never, ever smell it on yourself, no matter how hard you try.
That is a perfect analogy.
We could look at our neighbor across the street and say, oh, he bought that convertible because he's having a massive midlife crisis and wants the guys at the country club to think he's still a hotshot. But when we look in the mirror, we say, I bought this convertible because of the precise German engineering and the incredible turning radius.
Yes, that captures the introspection illusion perfectly. We have this profound asymmetry in how we view the human experience. We hold a microscope to others and easily identify the social pressures acting upon them. We see the strings attached to the puppet, but when we hold up a mirror to our own actions, we only see our own independent free will. We believe we cut the strings.
Okay, I hear what you're saying about the introspection illusion, but I'm struggling to buy that this is truly an invisible blind spot.
Why is that?
Well, aren't these tech executives just too proud to admit they care about status? Nobody wants to look like a lemming blindly following the herd, especially highly successful type A personalities in Silicon Valley. Our entire culture praises the rebel, the maverick, the independent thinker. It feels far more likely that these respondents are just lying on the questionnaire to protect their egos.
It's a very fair critique, and it's actually the exact same critique the researchers anticipated. Is this just social desirability bias, or people just giving the answer that makes them look best on paper?
Right, it's just human nature to want to look good.
But the researchers dug deeper and found that it's not just pride or ego protection. They discovered this exact same blind spot exists even in scenarios where conforming is considered the polite, appropriate, or genuinely good thing to do.
Okay, wait. Give me an example of when conforming is the goal.
Think about visiting a foreign country where you are completely unfamiliar with the local customs. In that scenario, it is considered highly polite and respectful to follow the herd.
Right, like if everyone takes their shoes off before entering a building, you take your shoes off, you observe the locals, and you copy them.
Exactly. Or think about attending a formal black tie wedding. Going rogue and showing up in a neon green tracksuit isn't celebrated as a positive expression of your fierce individuality.
No, it's considered a massive social faux pas. You're ruining the photos.
Right, you are supposed to conform to the dress code. Yet, the data shows that even in these highly specific situations where being influenced by others is the socially desirable, celebrated thing to do, people still couldn't see the influence on themselves. They still denied it.
Oh, wow. Okay, so if it was just about ego, they would gladly admit to conforming in the black tie scenario because that makes them look like a good, polite person.
Exactly. But they don't.
Which means we aren't denying it out of pride. We're denying it because it is completely invisible to our conscious processing. We
Yes.
genuinely do not feel the influence happening to us in real time.
The brain is incredibly efficient at hiding its own work from us. We don't see the influence, so we assume it didn't occur. But, as Berger points out, a lack of awareness does not equal a lack of influence. The ocean current is moving you whether you feel the water rushing past your skin or not.
So for the listener right now, if you're an entrepreneur or a product designer or a marketer, the practical takeaway here is foundational to your business. You can never rely purely on asking your customers why they bought your product.
Never. It's a trap.
Right. If you send out a post-purchase survey asking why did you choose our software or why did you buy our energy drink, your customers are going to give you a highly rational, functional answer. They will say, the price was right, or it had the features I needed.
And they aren't lying to you. They genuinely believe that is the full story.
Exactly. But they are blind to the garlic breath. Instead of relying solely on self-reported surveys, you have to observe actual behavior and the social context surrounding your users. You have to do ethnographic research. You have to look at the invisible currents they are swimming in because they cannot see the water themselves.
And if we pull that thread a little further and look at the bigger picture, it raises a deeply provocative question.
Okay, I'm ready.
If our brains are capable of making us completely blind to why we buy a $60,000 luxury car, are we also blind to the origins of the most intimate, personal choices we make in our entire lives?
Like what?
Like, does this invisible influence extend to how we choose our life partners?
Uh-oh. Are we about to scientifically dismantle the concept of romance today? Because that feels dangerous.
We might just be deconstructing the myth of the soulmate.
Oh boy. Okay, let's do it.
Let's look at the historical context Berger provides. The idea of a soulmate is deeply embedded in our collective psyche, and it has existed for thousands of years. Think back to Plato's Symposium, written around 3-5 BC.
Oh yeah, I know this one.
Right. Plato presents this beautiful mythological origin story where humans originally had 4 arms, 4 legs, and a single head with 2 faces.
Which sounds terrifying, by the way.
It does. But they were incredibly powerful, so powerful that they actually threatened the gods on Mount Olympus. So Zeus had to come up with a creative punishment. He didn't want to wipe humans out entirely because then the gods wouldn't receive any more sacrifices or tributes.
Very practical of Zeus.
Right. So instead, he decided to literally split them entirely in half.
Slicing them down the middle to diminish their strength and punish their hubris?
Precisely. And the myth states that ever since that violent separation, these split humans have been miserable, wandering the earth, desperately longing for their other half, forever searching for that one missing puzzle piece that would make them whole again.
It's very dramatic.
It is. Now, obviously, we don't scientifically believe in 4-armed humans anymore, but that underlying romantic notion completely dominates our culture. Every R&B song, every romantic comedy from the 90s, the entire concept of a dating app algorithm, they all reinforce the idea that there's one unique, mathematically perfect Mr. or Mrs. right out there waiting to be found.
It's an incredibly seductive idea. I mean, it feels so reassuring to believe that out of all the chaos in the universe, you found the one single person who is uniquely destined for you.
Yes, exactly.
But when you contrast that poetic notion with cold, hard demographic statistics,
Yeah.
the math gets incredibly awkward.
The math practically ruins the poetry. Let's run the numbers objectively. There are over 330 million people in the United States alone.
Right.
Even if you aggressively filter that pool, let's say you filter out married people, people of the gender you aren't attracted to, people outside of your preferred age bracket, people with fundamentally incompatible life goals, you are still left with millions upon millions of eligible, highly compatible people.
That's a lot of soulmates.
And if you expand that to the global population, there are hundreds of millions of people who could potentially be your perfect match.
Yet, despite those hundreds of millions of global options, the data shows that over a third of Americans meet their spouse at work or at school.
Yeah. Berger gives this incredibly mundane but accurate example of bagging groceries.
Oh, I love this example.
Right. Imagine you get a part-time job at the local supermarket during college. You start chatting with the person bagging groceries in lane 7 next to you. You make a joke about tomatoes bruising.
Very romantic.
A few weeks later, you grab a slice of pizza after your shift. 3 years later, you get married. Is it cosmic destiny that your one true soulmate just happened to apply for a job bagging groceries at the exact same local supermarket as you and was assigned to the exact same Tuesday afternoon shift? Or is it something far more mechanistic?
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the answer is going to bother some people.
To understand the mechanism behind the grocery store romance, we have to look at a classic, fascinating experiment conducted by psychologist Richard Moreland at the University of Pittsburgh. He wanted to test the parameters of attraction in a controlled setting.
Okay, what did he do?
He used his own psychology class, which was a typical large undergraduate lecture hall course with stadium seating. Think of a room with about 200 students packed in.
Okay, I'm picturing the classic college lecture hall.
Moreland had 4 women, let's call them women A, B, C, and D, pose as students in this course. They were all typical college-aged women dressed casually in jeans and sweaters. Crucially, they were all independently rated by a separate panel as being similarly attractive.
So no one was like a supermodel, and no one was considered unattractive.
Right. None of them were distinctively gorgeous to the point of turning heads, and none of them were distinctively plain. They blended in perfectly. Over the course of the 40-session semester, Moreland orchestrated their attendance. Woman A attended exactly 0 classes, Woman B attended 5 classes, Woman C attended 10 classes, and Woman D attended 15 classes.
Were they participating in the class? Like, did they raise their hands, debate the professor, or show off their personalities?
They did absolutely nothing. The rules of the experiment were strict. They arrived a few minutes before the lecture started, walked slowly down to the front rows where the majority of the stadium seating could see them, sat quietly, took notes during the lecture, and packed up and left the moment class was over.
So no talking at all.
0 verbal or nonverbal interaction with the actual enrolled students. No chatting before class, no shared glances, nothing. At the end of the semester, Moreland projected photos of these 4 women onto the large screen at the front of the hall and gave his students a survey.
Okay, moment of truth.
He asked them to rate how attractive they found each woman and how much they would like to become friends with them.
And the results of this survey weren't a random scatterplot, were they?
Not at all. The results formed a perfect, undeniable mathematical slope. The woman who attended 15 classes was rated as significantly more attractive than the woman who attended 10. The woman who attended 10 was rated more attractive than the woman who attended 5. And the woman who attended 5 was rated more attractive than the woman who never showed up.
Wait, hold on. This is actually kind of depressing if you think about it. Are you telling me that the profound, unique spark I felt with my partner is literally just a localized proximity glitch?
Well,
Are you saying my brain is just lazy?
yeah.
And it's confusing repeated visual exposure with romantic destiny? Because that completely ruins the magic of human connection.
I completely understand why that feels like an existential crisis. It really strips the romance away and replaces it with biology. But from a neurological standpoint, we know exactly why this happens. It's a psychological phenomenon called the mere exposure effect.
Mere exposure.
Simply put, familiarity breeds liking. But the underlying reason is rooted deep in our evolutionary biology and how our brains manage cognitive load.
Let's dig into that evolutionary biology. Why would the brain equate seeing someone a lot with finding them attractive?
You have to think about the brain of an early hunter-gatherer. The world is incredibly dangerous and complex. The brain's primary job is survival, which means quickly sorting the environment into 2 categories: safe or dangerous.
Right.
Anything novel, anything unknown requires a massive amount of mental energy to evaluate. Is that unfamiliar berry poisonous? Is that stranger from another tribe hostile? The unknown triggers the amygdala. It creates a microscopic amount of friction and stress because it requires processing power.
Right. The new thing could kill you, so you have to be on high alert.
Exactly. But if you encounter something repeatedly, as a specific type of tree, a path to the river, or a face in your tribe and it doesn't harm you, your brain learns that it is safe. Because of this, the brain strongly favors what psychologists call processing fluency.
Processing fluid?
Yes. When we see something repeatedly, our visual cortex and our memory networks don't have to work as hard to process it the second, third, or 15th time. The neural pathways are greased.
It's like walking down a path you've already cleared with a machete versus bushwhacking through the dense jungle. The cleared path takes zero effort.
That's a great metaphor.
Yeah.
And here's the profound trick our biology plays on us. Our brain non-consciously translates that ease of processing, that lack of cognitive friction, into a positive emotion.
Oh, wow.
We misinterpret the feeling of this is easy for my brain to process as I genuinely like this, or this person is highly attractive. The lack of danger gets coded as affection. And the most startling part of Moreland's experiment.
Right.
When the students were asked if they recognized those women or had ever seen them before, almost none of them realized they had. The influence bypassed their conscious awareness entirely.
That is wild. If you had stopped one of those college students and told them, hey, you only rated woman D higher because you saw the back of her head 15 times, they would have looked at you like you were insane.
They would have been so offended.
They would say, no, I just like her eyes. Or she just has a warm, inviting vibe.
Yeah.
But it was literally just mere exposure. It was processing fluency masquerading as preference.
They would defend their choice as an expression of their independent tastes, circling right back to the introspection illusion we discussed with the BMW drivers.
So if you are building a brand or pitching a startup to investors or even just trying to get a promotion at a massive corporation, the practical takeaway here is that visibility is viability.
Absolutely.
We spend so much time obsessing over the perfect pitch deck, the wittiest ad copy, the most charismatic presentation. But sometimes you literally just need to show up consistently. Repeated, low-friction exposure builds trust and preference long before the customer or the boss consciously realizes they like you. You're building processing fluency.
It changes how you view marketing entirely. Just being in the room, just sending the consistent weekly newsletter that they merely scroll past, just keeping your logo in their peripheral vision on a billboard. It's doing invisible neurological work for you. It's greasing the neural pathways.
Okay, so we've established that physical repetition over weeks and months changes who we like and who we find attractive. But let's accelerate the timeline.
Okay, how fast?
Like real time. Can a completely random, unrelated event in our environment completely rewrite how we judge a stranger's moral character in real time? Because that brings us to the concept of non-conscious priming.
This is the area of behavioral science where things start to feel almost spooky because it shows how fragile our objectivity really is. Let's look at the classic Donald study.
The Donald study.
Imagine you are a participant brought into a university psychology lab. The researcher tells you that you are going to participate in two entirely separate, unrelated short studies. The first is a simple memory test. You are given a list of words to memorize while keeping a string of numbers in your head.
Simple enough.
Right. Now we split the participants into two groups. Group 1 is given a list containing words like reckless, conceited, stubborn, and aloof.
Kind of negative, edgy, slightly antisocial words.
Right. Now, Group 2 is given a different list to memorize. Their words include adventurous, self-confident, independent, and persistent.
Okay, wait. Those are the exact same underlying behavioral concepts, but spun with a highly positive, heroic framing. Like, stubborn becomes persistent. Reckless becomes adventurous.
That's the key. So both groups memorize their respective words. A few minutes later, the researcher says, great, the memory test is over. Now for the completely unrelated reading comprehension study. Please read this brief paragraph about a man named Donald and tell us what you think of his personality.
All right, who is Donald?
Now, both groups read the exact same paragraph, word for word. It describes Donald as a guy who spends a lot of his time looking for excitement. He has climbed Mount McKinley, shot the Colorado Rapids in a kayak, driven in a demolition derby, and piloted a jet-powered boat without knowing much about boats. He wants to cross the Atlantic in a sailboat. The text notes that he relies only on himself, and once he makes up his mind, he rarely changes it.
He sounds intense, like the kind of guy who makes for a great movie character, but might be exhausting to actually hang out with.
The paragraph is intentionally written to be morally and personality-wise ambiguous. You could interpret his actions in multiple ways. The researchers then asked the participants to judge Donald's character.
Okay, what happened?
Group 1, the group that had just memorized words like reckless and stubborn, judged Donald extremely negatively. They thought he was a dangerous, arrogant jerk who was going to get himself killed and probably didn't care who he hurt along the way.
And Group 2.
Group 2, who had memorized words like adventurous and independent, judged the exact same Donald as a cool, independent hero who is living life to the fullest and boldly charting his own course.
That is unbelievable. Because I guarantee you, if you sat those participants down and interrogated them about how they formed their opinion of Donald, they would swear on their lives it was an objective judgment based purely on the text provided.
They absolutely would.
They'll say, I read that he piloted a boat without knowing how, therefore he is objectively reckless. They had absolutely no idea that a random, seemingly unrelated memory test they took 5 minutes prior was acting as a heavy filter on their reality.
None at all. They were entirely certain they were being objective evaluators of the text.
It's like someone slipping tinted contact lenses into your eyes while you're blinking. Suddenly, the whole world looks blue, but you don't realize you're wearing lenses, so you just assume the sky actually changed color.
Yes.
Your reality has been altered, but your perception of your own objectivity remains perfectly intact. So, if we are this susceptible to a few random words on a memory test, are we ever truly objective? How does a word we read 5 minutes ago hijack our judgment so completely?
The short answer is no. True objectivity is incredibly rare. To understand how the hijacking happens, we have to look at the mechanics of what cognitive psychologists call semantic priming and associative networks.
Okay, break that down.
Think of your brain not as a filing cabinet, but as a massive interconnected web of concepts. Every idea, every memory, every word is a node in this web, connected by threads of association.
Like a giant spider web of ideas.
Yes. And when you read the word reckless, it literally lights up a specific node in that web. It activates it. But that light, that neurological activation, doesn't just turn off instantly the moment you stop looking at the word. It stays warm. It hovers near the surface of your consciousness.
That's primed.
Exactly. Furthermore, through a process called spreading activation, the heat from the reckless node spreads along the threads to related concepts: danger, stupidity, arrogance. So when you read a morally ambiguous story about Donald 5 minutes later, your brain is faced with a task. It needs to categorize his behavior.
Right.
The brain is an energy-conserving organ. It's a cognitive miser. It looks for the easiest, most accessible tool to do the job. Since the reckless node and its related negative concepts are already lit up and hovering right there at the top of the toolbox, your brain grabs them and applies them to Donald.
It uses whatever tool is already warm and ready. Whatever concepts are currently floating near the surface of your environment will inevitably spill over and color your next decision.
That's exactly it.
This has massive, almost intimidating implications. Think about this from an entrepreneurial standpoint, or really any scenario where you are trying to persuade someone or negotiate a deal. Context is absolutely everything. The environment you set up matters just as much as the product you are selling or the argument you are making.
Oh, without a doubt.
If you are running a retail store, the type of music playing in the background isn't just ambiance. It is actively priming your customers' associative networks. If you're going to a high-stakes client pitch, the casual small talk you make in the elevator before you even open your laptop is priming their brain.
Yes, the small talk is huge.
If you complain about the terrible traffic or a disaster in the news, you are lighting up nodes of risk, frustration, and fear. When you finally ask for the sale, their brain is going to evaluate your proposal through a lens of risk.
Conversely, if you talk about a recent success, a beautiful weekend, or a breakthrough in the industry, you are lighting up nodes of opportunity, safety, and confidence. You aren't just selling a product, you are actively curating the mental lens through which they will evaluate that product. You are setting the conditions for how their brain will categorize the ambiguous information you are about to present.
Okay, so let's connect the final pieces of this puzzle. We've established that influence is completely invisible to us, hiding behind the introspection illusion. We've seen how the mere exposure effect makes us romantically drawn to familiar things because of processing fluency. We've seen how the Donald experiment proves that random environmental priming can completely rewrite our moral judgments.
Right, those are the pieces.
But if we put all of this together, does influence always mean we just blindly copy what everyone else is doing? Are we just mindless lemmings always following the herd toward whatever is most familiar and primed?
That is the crucial question, and it brings us to the overarching framework of Berger's entire book. Social influence does not just equal imitation. Influence acts exactly like a magnet. And what is the fundamental property of a magnet?
They attract, pulling things toward them, but if you flip them around, they also strongly repel.
Exactly right. Sometimes we conform. We are attracted to what others are doing. We imitate. Berger points out the phenomenon of baby names. Why do thousands of parents suddenly decide to name their baby Mia?
Because it's popular.
Right, because names like Madison and Sophia have been highly popular recently. We hear the cadence, the soft vowel sounds, the rhythm of those names in our culture, and we are unconsciously drawn to it. The magnet is attracting us. But sometimes we diverge, we repel, we actively avoid doing things specifically because other people are doing them.
Like when you are sitting in brutal rush hour traffic and someone aggressively cuts you off, you grip the steering wheel and desperately want to land the horn and scream. But you stop yourself because you think, I don't want to be one of those road rage people.
Perfect example.
You are actively diverging from a behavior to avoid an association with a group you look down on. Or, as Berger notes in the text, you see this dynamic play out in families all the time.
Oh, siblings are the best example of this.
The older sibling gets labeled by the parents and teachers as the smart one or the academic one. So entirely unconsciously, the younger sibling decides to become the funny one or the athletic one or the rebellious one. They need to carve out unique territory. They're differentiating themselves.
That drive for distinction is a remarkably powerful form of social influence. Psychologists call this optimal distinctiveness theory.
Optimal distinctiveness theory.
Yeah. As humans, we have two competing fundamental needs. We have an evolutionary need to belong to a group because being outcast in hunter-gatherer times meant death. But we also have a need to feel unique and differentiated, to have our own identity within the tribe.
The push and pull.
Exactly. We are constantly navigating the tension between these two forces. We want to be the same, but different. And Berger brings up a stark, almost disturbing example of the repelling force of this magnet from a study on political tribalism.
Okay, before we get into this, I need to make something very clear to the listener. When we look at the results of this study, it isn't a left-wing or right-wing problem. We are absolutely not taking a political side here. The data proves it is universally applicable across the entire political spectrum. It's a human glitch, deeply rooted in our evolutionary need for tribal belonging, not a partisan one.
Exactly. This happens identically to both the left and the right. We're just looking at the mechanics of human behavior. So the researchers conducted a study where they asked citizens to evaluate a specific detailed welfare policy. The policy outlined a set amount of financial assistance per month, specific medical insurance provisions, job training requirements, things of that nature.
Okay, pretty standard policy stuff.
When the researchers presented this identical policy to people, their attitudes toward it completely shifted based solely on one single piece of information. Whether they were told the policy was currently supported by Democrats or supported by Republicans.
Wait, let me make sure I understand the parameters. The actual details of the policy were 100% identical. The math, the timeline, the economic benefits, the requirements.
100% identical. Not a single comma was changed in the policy description. But if a conservative voter was told the policy was authored and supported by Democrats, they hated it. They found massive flaws in it.
And if they were told the opposite?
If that exact same conservative voter was told the identical policy was authored by Republicans, they loved it. And the exact same dynamic happened in reverse for liberal voters.
Wow.
Their objective cognitive evaluation of the policy's merits was completely overridden by the magnetic pull of social influence. They felt an overwhelming psychological need to conform to their perceived in-group, the attract force of the magnet, and an equally overwhelming need to diverge from or repel their out-group. The actual objective facts of the policy became completely irrelevant to their brain's processing.
This raises an incredible point, and honestly, it completely flips how I think about the concept of independence. Is rebellion actually just another form of conformity?
It really is.
Think about it. If you are a teenager and you dye your hair neon green and listen to aggressively obscure punk music specifically to rebel against your preppy classical music listening parents, are you actually being an independent freethinker?
Nope.
If you're doing the exact opposite of someone just because they are doing it, you aren't being independent at all. You are still letting them dictate your behavior, just in reverse. Your parents are still the anchor determining your choices.
That is a brilliant insight, and it's the core of Berger's argument. Whether you are conforming to the herd or rebelling against the herd, your behavior is still entirely anchored to the people around you. You are reacting, not originating. The hipster who refuses to listen to a band the exact moment they become mainstream and start playing on the radio is just as influenced by the mainstream as the person who only listens to top 40 radio.
They're both trapped by the magnet.
Exactly. The magnet is just flipped to repel instead of attract. But the magnetic field is still the only thing dictating their movement.
So for you listening, if you are building a business, the practical takeaway here is that you have to know who your customer wants to be. But almost more importantly, you have to deeply understand who your customer doesn't want to be.
Yes, the outgroup.
Sometimes the most effective way to get a target demographic to adopt your product isn't to tell them how great the features are. It's to show them that a group they actively dislike or want to diverge from is currently avoiding it. You position your brand as the anti-them. It's understanding and utilizing the repelling force of the magnet.
It's all about identity signaling. People buy products, adopt beliefs, and make choices not just for what those things functionally do, but for what those things communicate to the world about who they are. And defining who you are often requires clearly defining who you are not.
Let's zoom out and synthesize all of this because we've covered a tremendous amount of psychological and biological ground today.
We really have.
We started with the Palo Alto BMW blind spot, where we learned about the introspection illusion, how we can clearly see influence in others but are completely blind to it in ourselves. We moved to the classroom romance and the grocery store meet cute, where we saw that mere exposure and processing fluency can dictate something as profound as who we find attractive.
A biology over destiny.
Exactly. Then we explored the Donald experiment, proving that the associative networks in our brain can be primed by random words to completely rewrite our moral judgments. And finally, the magnet analogy, showing that both conformity and rebellion are just two sides of the exact same coin of social influence.
When you tie all four of those concepts together, the grand synthesis of the introduction to invisible influence is this. We are not the sole authors of our choices. We are co-authors with our environment.
Co-authors.
Yes. The notion of the purely independent, highly rational decision maker, the person who acts in a sterile vacuum based solely on their own internal compass, is a biological and psychological myth. We are deeply, fundamentally social creatures, and our context is constantly writing our story alongside us.
And I think it's vital to say that recognizing our own blindness to social influence isn't a weakness. It's not a reason to despair or feel like we have no free will trapped in some dystopian sci-fi movie. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Because as long as you deny that you are influenced, as long as you insist you don't have garlic breath, you are entirely at the mercy of that influence.
That's beautifully said.
Admitting that we are susceptible to these invisible forces is the very first vital step toward actually reclaiming control over our decisions, our businesses, and our lives. You have to see the ocean currents before you can learn how to build a sail and navigate them.
It's about moving from being an unconscious reactor to your environment to becoming a conscious architect of your own environment.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to carry into your day. We've spent this entire deep dive talking about how simply observing others or being subtly exposed to something shapes our internal preferences without us ever realizing it. But what happens when the invisible influence steps out of the shadows and becomes visible pressure? If you were sitting in a boardroom and every single person around you confidently stated a fact that you knew with your own two eyes was entirely false, would you stand your ground and fight for the truth? Or would the magnet pull you in and would you fold? We'll leave you to ponder that as you navigate the invisible currents of your own life today. So I want you to think about the last major decision you made, like for your business, your career, or, even just what you had for lunch today.
Right, something totally mundane.
Yeah, exactly. You weighed the options, you considered what you actually like, and you made your own independent choice. Or at least that is what it felt like.
Oh, it definitely feels that way.
Right. But what if I told you that your choices are, well, mostly an illusion, and that you are, at your core, just a highly evolved copycat?
I love how you phrased that, because today we are really unpacking these hidden forces of imitation. We're going to explore how the people around us silently dictate our decisions, governing literally everything from, the products we buy to the multi-million-dollar deals we close.
It's kind of terrifying when you think about it.
It is. But for anyone tuning in who is interested in business, leadership, or just entrepreneurship in general, understanding this invisible current of social influence isn't just like a neat psychological parlor trick. It is the fundamental difference between launching a completely forgotten product and building an absolute blockbuster.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is a massive claim to make. right out of the gate.
I know.
We all walk around feeling like we are the captains of our own ships.
Right?
We think we choose a specific car because if it's, I don't know, gas mileage and safety ratings, or we pick a career path because of our own unique personal passions.
Exactly. We want to believe we're perfectly rational.
Yeah. But this stack of research you brought today basically argues that we are constantly outsourcing our brains to the crowd. So I guess my first question is just how easily are we swayed by others? I mean, surely when we are presented with absolute objective facts, we stick to our guns, right? We don't just blindly follow the herd if the herd is like walking right off a cliff.
You would certainly hope that is the case. But, well, to really understand how deep this biological programming goes, we have to look at how human beings behave when they are completely unsure of their environment, and then compare that to how they behave when they are absolutely certain.
Okay, so let's start with the unsure part.
Yeah, let's start there. Back in the 1930s, there was this psychologist named Muzaffar Sharif, and he was completely obsessed with understanding how group norms form out of thin air. Like, he wanted to know how a group of total strangers could just come to agree on a shared reality.
Sounds like an impossible thing to actually measure.
Right. So he designed a really brilliant, albeit pretty disorienting experiment. He basically took participants and put them into a pitch black room.
Wait, like totally pitch black, no windows, no light from under the door.
Total sensory deprivation, essentially.
Right.
No furniture you could see, no reference points, just a void. And on the wall in front of them, he projected a single, tiny pinpoint of light.
Okay.
He asked the participants to stare at this light and just report how far it moved across the wall. Now, here's the catch that makes this whole thing so fascinating. The light never moved at all.
Wait, really?
It was completely stationary.
So it was just a trick from the very beginning. The researchers were actively lying to them.
Yeah, it's an optical illusion called the autokinetic effect. When you stare at a small point of light in total darkness, your eyes eventually begin to fatigue. And because there are no other visual reference points in the room for your brain to sort of anchor onto, the tiny involuntary micro-movements of your eye muscles make your brain think the light is actually drifting around.
Oh, wow. So your own biology is essentially lying to you. Your brain is trying to make sense of a literal vacuum, and it just manufactures movement where there is none.
That is the absolute perfect way to phrase it. Now, when Sharif tested people alone in this room, their answers varied wildly. Some people said the light moved, 2 inches. Others swore up and down that it moved 6 inches or even a full foot.
Because everyone's eyes are fluttering differently.
Exactly. Everyone had their own unique personal reality based on their own flawed visual perception. But then Sharif changed the parameters of the game. He put people into the dark room in groups of 2 or 3, and he had them call out their estimates out loud.
Oh, I see where this is going. So instead of just guessing in a vacuum, they're now guessing while actively listening to what the other people in the room claim to be seeing.
Yes. And what happened next is really the foundation of modern social psychology. Those wildly different estimates, they started to converge.
No way.
Yeah. Over a series of trials, the person who initially said 2 inches and the person who said 6 inches gradually shifted their answers until they met right in the middle at, say, 4 inches. They created a shared group norm out of absolutely nothing.
That is wild.
And here's the real kicker. When Sharif asked the participants later if they were influenced by the others in the room, almost all of them vehemently denied it. They genuinely believed that their final answer was just an objective, independent observation of how far the light moved.
Okay, but I feel like I have to defend humanity a little bit here.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
That is a totally ambiguous situation.
Yeah.
I mean, you are sitting in a dark room, your eyes are actively playing tricks on you, and you have zero outside information. Under those specific circumstances, of course you are going to look to the people around you for a sanity check.
That makes total sense.
Right. That doesn't make you a mindless copycat. That just makes you a reasonable person gathering data when you're confused.
Well, that is exactly what another brilliant psychologist, Solomon Asch, thought in the 1950s. Asch really didn't buy Sharif's conclusion that human beings are fundamentally conformists. He thought, sure, people conform when they have absolutely no idea what the right answer is.
Because they're literally in the dark.
Right. But Asch figured if the answer is blatantly obvious, people will trust their own eyes. They won't just bend to the will of the group for no reason. So Asch set up an experiment specifically designed to prove Sharif wrong. He brought participants into a brightly lit room for what he called a simple vision test.
I have the feeling this is going to backfire on him spectacularly.
Oh, it completely shattered his entire worldview. So imagine you are the participant in this study, right? You walk into a room, let's call it room B7, and there are 6 other people already sitting around a long rectangular table.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You take the last empty seat near the end of the row. The experimenter at the front of the room shows you a large card with a single vertical line printed on it. We will call that the target line. Then he shows you a second card with 3 comparison lines, labeled A, B, and C. Your job is incredibly simple. You just have to state out loud which of the 3 lines matches the target line in length.
Like, how easy are we talking? Is it one of those subtle differences where you have to squint and really measure it?
No, ridiculously easy. It is not a trick question, and it doesn't require 20/20 vision. Line A might be 3 inches shorter, line C might be 4 inches longer, and line B is the exact identical length. Like a young child could get it right in a second.
Got it. So it's foolproof.
Exactly. So the experimenter starts asking everyone around the table for their answer, going one by one down the line. The first guy looks at the cards and says, line B. The second guy nods and says, line B, and so on. If it gets to you, you say line B. The whole process is smooth, logical, and entirely boring.
Makes total sense. Everyone sees the same objective reality.
But on the next trial, the atmosphere in the room shifts. The experimenter shows a new set of lines. Again, the answer is blatantly obvious. Let's say the matching line this time is clearly line C. But the first guy down at the end of the table looks at it, pauses, and says, line A.
Wait, line A, the one that is noticeably inches shorter.
The completely undeniably wrong one.
Okay.
And then the second guy looks at the board and says, line A. The third guy says, line A. The fourth, the fifth, all of them say line A with total confidence. And now the spotlight swings to you. It is your turn to speak.
Okay, wait, so even when our own eyes are literally screaming that the group is wrong, we still follow them. That is crazy. That's like ignoring your car's GPS and driving straight into a lake just because the guy in front of you did it.
That is a phenomenal analogy, because what Ash found completely shocked him, and honestly, it should shock all of us. Keep in mind, the other 6 people in the room were not actual participants. They were actors hired by the researchers.
Oh, so they were in on it.
Exactly. They were explicitly instructed to give the wrong answer unanimously on specific trials. And when faced with this unified, completely incorrect majority, the actual participants caved. About a third of the time, they ignored their own perfectly good vision and gave the clearly wrong answer simply to match the group.
A third of the time.
Yeah.
That is wild. They are looking right at the physical evidence. They know it is wrong, and they voluntarily choose to be wrong.
Yeah.
Why? What is actually happening in our brains that overrides our basic sensory input like that?
Well, it really comes down to 2 incredibly powerful psychological drivers: information and social pressure. The information piece is what we saw in Sharif's dark room. We constantly use the behavior of others as a heuristic shortcut, like a mental rule of thumb, to save time and cognitive energy.
Right.
If you are walking down an unfamiliar street looking for a place to eat, and you see 2 restaurants, one is completely empty and the other has a line of people waiting out the door, which one do you choose?
The crowded one, obviously, because I just naturally assume all those people waiting in the cold know something I don't.
Yeah.
Like, the food must be incredible to justify the wait.
Exactly. You are using their behavior as information. You are assuming the crowd has done the research so you don't have to. It is a deeply ingrained evolutionary survival mechanism. If you are foraging in the woods and everyone in your tribe suddenly drops their baskets and starts sprinting in the opposite direction, you do not stop, pull out a magnifying glass, and ask for a peer-reviewed study on why they are running.
Right, you run.
You run. You assume they saw a predator. But the second driver, social pressure, is what Ash uncovered with the lines. Even when we consciously know the group is factually wrong, it is deeply physically uncomfortable to be the odd one out.
Oh, I hate that feeling.
We all do. Think about being at a formal dinner party where the host offers dessert, but every single person before you politely declines. You might be starving for a slice of that cake, but you probably wave your hand and say, oh, no, thanks, I couldn't possibly, just because you don't want to be the only one eating.
Yes, you don't want to be the glutton while everyone else is sipping their black coffee and looking virtuous. It's that visceral fear of breaking the social harmony.
Exactly. We are fundamentally social animals, and historically, being ostracized or exiled from the group didn't just mean eating lunch alone, right? It meant death. You could not survive the winter without the tribe. So conformity is quite literally wired into our nervous systems for survival. And this isn't exclusively a human trait. The source material details this incredible, almost unbelievable example involving vervet monkeys in South Africa.
Oh, I love this part of the research. These monkeys are basically little furry humans. The researchers note they deal with anxiety, they suffer from hypertension, and some of them even develop a distinct preference for afternoon alcohol consumption.
Yes. They are a remarkably complex species, which makes them the absolute perfect subjects to study social dynamics. Scientists wanted to see just how strong local cultural norms were among these monkey troops. Like, could they artificially manufacture a tradition?
Okay, how do they do that?
So they took two separate groups of monkeys and gave them two large trays of corn. One tray was dyed bright pink, and the other was dyed bright blue. For the first group of monkeys, the scientists soaked the pink corn in a terribly bitter, repulsive liquid before serving it. For the second group, they reversed it and made the blue corn taste awful.
So they are actively conditioning them, teaching them a really harsh lesson about food safety.
Right. And very quickly, the monkeys learned the new rule of their environment. The pink group avoids the pink corn at all costs, and the blue group avoids the blue corn. They establish a clear local norm based on negative reinforcement. But here is the brilliant twist in the experiment.
I'm ready.
After the norm was established, the scientists stopped using the bitter liquid. They washed the corn. Now, both the pink and the blue corn were perfectly fine, sweet, and totally safe to eat. Then they simply waited for a new generation of baby monkeys to be born.
Okay, babies who never once experienced the bitter taste. They have zero firsthand trauma associated with those colors.
Exactly. These babies had a completely blank slate. When they were old enough to forage for solid food, the scientists presented the two trays of perfectly good, safe corn. What do you think the babies did?
Well, based on everything we've talked about, I'm guessing the babies just copy their moms. They ignore the food they see the adults ignoring.
They copied them to an extreme, almost comical degree. The babies completely avoided the culturally forbidden color of their specific troop. In fact, the researchers observed some of these babies literally sitting on top of a pile of the perfectly good, ignored corn just so they could reach the approved color.
Kidding.
No. They treated it like furniture, they completely tuned it out as a food source, and the observation goes even deeper than that. In vervet monkey society, adult males sometimes migrate and switch groups when they reach maturity.
Okay, so a new guy comes into town.
Right. When a male who grew up in a troop that strictly avoided blue corn moved to a new troop that avoided pink corn, he didn't stick to his childhood habits. He completely switched his diet. He adopted the local norm of his new peers almost immediately. Monkey see, monkey do.
That is just incredible. The new guy shows up at the new corporate office, sees everyone drinking the pink corn, and just pretends he's always hated the blue corn so he doesn't rock the boat. It's pure assimilation. So if we translate this out of the jungle and into the boardroom, what does this actually mean for you listening to this?
It's a huge takeaway.
Right. If you are an entrepreneur trying to launch a disruptive new product, or if you are a manager trying to overhaul your company's deeply entrenched culture, you cannot rely purely on a logical argument. You cannot just present a spreadsheet showing that your new software saves 10% more time. Humans and monkeys look to their peers to determine what is safe and what is acceptable.
Absolutely.
You have to make the adoption of your product or your idea highly visible to the broader group. If nobody can physically see that other people are using your software or championing your new workflow, they will not take the risk of being the first to adopt it. The social proof has to be observable.
Visibility is the undisputed engine of imitation. If they can't see the herd moving, they simply won't move. But this herd mentality isn't just a matter of psychological peer pressure or a conscious desire to fit in at the office. It operates on a level much deeper than conscious thought. It is literally hardwired into the biological architecture of our brains.
Which takes us from the behavioral psychology into the actual neuroscience. So we have monkeys copying monkeys and humans copying humans in dark rooms. But is this just a psychological quirk of not wanting to be embarrassed, or is there a real, physical, anatomical reason we are such relentless copycats?
The answer lies in the neurology, and the discovery of how this works is honestly one of the greatest happy accidents in the history of modern science. It happened in a laboratory in Parma, Italy. A team of neuroscientists was studying the motor functions of a macaque monkey. They had the monkey hooked up to a complex machine with incredibly fine electrodes attached directly to its premotor cortex.
Just to clarify for everyone, the premotor cortex is the part of the brain responsible for planning and initiating physical movements, right?
Correct. Specifically, they were monitoring the neurons involved in the movements of the monkey's hands and mouth. Every time the monkey moved its hand to grab an object or brought something to its mouth to eat, those specific brain cells would fire, and the monitor hooked up to the electrodes would broadcast a loud, sharp noise, like a blip blip sound.
Okay, got it.
So the monkey reaches out and picks up a peanut, and the machine goes blip, blip. The researchers are mapping this out for hours. Then one afternoon, they leave the machine turned on and take a break. A little while later, a graduate student walks into the lab.
And this grad student, who is completely unaware of the historical moment about to happen, is eating an ice cream cone.
Yes. The student strolls in, holding this gelato, and casually raises it to his mouth to take a bite. The monkey is sitting in its chair completely still, with its hands resting by its sides, simply watching the student. But as the student brings the ice cream to his lips, the machine hooked up to the monkey goes crazy. Blip, blip, blip.
But the monkey isn't moving an inch.
Exactly. That was the puzzle that stopped the researchers dead in their tracks. The monkey is totally immobile. Why is its motor cortex firing as if it is eating? After rigorous testing, the scientists realized a profound truth. The exact same neural cells that fired when the monkey took a physical action were also firing when the monkey merely observed someone else taking that same action.
That is wild.
The monkey's brain was essentially running a background simulation of the student's behavior. These specialized cells are what the scientific community now calls mirror neurons.
So our brains are constantly running a silent virtual reality simulation of what the people around us are doing.
Mm-hmm.
That is mind-blowing. I mean, it makes perfect sense why I start saying y'all after spending a single weekend with my friends from Texas.
Yes, exactly.
Or why, if I watch someone on television slice their finger with a kitchen knife, I actually grab my own hand and wince. My brain is literally mapping their physical experience onto my own neural pathways.
What's fascinating here is that this biological simulation isn't just an internal process. It constantly leaks out into our physical behavior, leading to a phenomenon psychologists refer to as non-conscious mimicry, or the chameleon effect.
The chameleon.
Right. We don't just simulate the action in the dark corners of our mind. Our bodies actively recreate it. Think about the mechanics of a contagious yawn. You see someone yawn across the room and suddenly your own jaw is dropping. When someone smiles warmly at you, it takes a tremendous amount of conscious effort not to smile back.
It really does.
Even infants, just 2 days old, will start crying hysterically if they hear an audio recording of another baby crying.
It's almost like an automatic reflex, like a sneeze. You can't just decide not to do it.
And it doesn't stop at physical reflexes. It bleeds into how we speak, how we stand, and how we take up space. We mimic facial expressions, postures, hand gestures, and even intricate linguistic styles. If you are sitting in a conference room and the person across the table leans back, sighs, and crosses their legs, give it 3 minutes. You will likely find yourself leaning back, shifting your weight, and crossing your legs too.
And you have no idea you're doing it.
You aren't plotting this out at all. It happens entirely beneath your conscious awareness.
But why? I mean, nature doesn't usually waste energy on parlor tricks.
Yeah.
What is the evolutionary benefit of being a bunch of physical chameleons? Why did our brains evolve to burn calories simulating the guy eating ice cream?
It acts as an incredibly potent social glue. Mimicry generates immediate rapport and signals kinship to the other party. When we act like someone else, we are subtly broadcasting a message. We're saying, I am like you, we belong to the same tribe, we are safe with each other. It creates a foundational bond of trust. The sources highlight some amazing research on the modern dating scene that proves just how powerful this invisible glue really is.
Oh, the speed dating linguistics study. I found this absolutely fascinating because it takes something we think of as this magical, unexplainable, romantic chemistry and basically boils it down to data.
It completely strips away the mystery, doesn't it? Researchers went to these speed dating events and recorded the brief, high-pressure conversations between strangers. Then they ran the audio through text analysis software to study the specific linguistic styles people used.
What exactly were they looking for?
They weren't looking at the topics of conversation like whether they both liked jogs or enjoyed hiking. They looked at the structural words, personal pronouns, articles, prepositions, and subtle syntactical patterns.
So the invisible scaffolding of how we talk.
Precisely the scaffolding. They found that daters whose linguistic styles non-consciously mimicked one another, people who naturally fell into the exact same rhythm, matching I statements for I statements or mirroring the use of abstract versus concrete nouns, were 3 times more likely to want to go on a second date with each other.
3 times. That is a massive statistical jump, just from unconsciously adopting the same grammatical structure as the person sitting across from you.
And the predictive power of this mirroring holds up over time. The researchers also studied existing couples and found that partners who had highly synchronized linguistic styles were 50% more likely to still be together 3 months later.
Wow.
We are fundamentally drawn to people who reflect us, not just in their big picture values, but in the micromechanics of their behavior.
Okay, so if you are listening to this and you're about to walk into a networking event or a team building retreat or even a first date, this is a massive tool to have in your back pocket. Pay attention to the subtle cues. We are biological copycats. Shared language, matched posture, and synchronized greeting styles automatically generate deep, non-conscious affinity.
Totally.
If a client always signs off their emails with cheers, try saying cheers back instead of your standard best regards. If they use short, punchy sentences, tighten up your own delivery. It sounds like a tiny, almost silly detail, but you are tapping into millions of years of evolutionary bonding software.
You are literally hacking the mirror neuron system.
Which brings us perfectly to the next level of this phenomenon. If this biological mimicry works in casual speed dating and minor email chains, how does this translate to dollars and cents? What happens when we take this natural phenomenon and intentionally apply it to high-stakes business environments? Let's get into that, because here is where we pivot from biology to bottom-line results. If we do this naturally, what happens when we do it on purpose?
Yeah.
How can we actively use this non-conscious mimicry to close deals and generate revenue?
The source material covers a really fascinating, highly structured study involving a high-stakes business negotiation. To set the scene, imagine two people, Jake and Susan. Jake is acting as the buyer. He is the type of person who absolutely hates haggling. He gets anxious, he feels confrontational, and he would frankly rather just pay full retail price than engage in a tense back and forth.
We all know a Jake.
Right. And Susan is playing the role of the seller. They are paired up in a simulated room to negotiate over a highly complicated multi-issue contract.
That's a tough setup, especially for Jake. When negotiations involve multiple moving parts, like price, delivery dates, warranty terms, it's incredibly easy for things to break down if both parties just dig their heels in.
It is a notoriously difficult scenario. So the researchers took half of the buyers in the simulation and gave them a secret set of instructions before they walked into the room. They told them to subtly but intentionally mimic their negotiation partner's physical mannerisms.
So they weaponized the chameleon effect.
They deployed it tactically, yes. The instructions were specific. If the seller rubbed their chin while thinking, the buyer should wait a moment and then casually rub their own chin. If the seller leaned back in their chair and crossed their arms, the buyer should gradually lean back and cross their arms.
But without being obvious about it.
Exactly. They had to be careful to keep it subtle so it didn't look like a cartoonish mocking routine, but they actively mirrored the body language of their opponent.
And what impact did this have on the actual contract negotiations? Did it change the math?
The results were staggering. The buyers who engaged in intentional mimicry were 5 times more likely to reach a mutually beneficial, successful deal. Yes. In the control group, where no mimicry was instructed, the negotiations almost always hit a wall and broke down. But the people who subtly copied their partners managed to close the deal 2/3 of the time.
5 times more likely just by rubbing your chin and shifting your weight in a chair. It almost sounds too easy. But that's not the only study that proves this. There's also the restaurant waiter study, which genuinely blew my mind because I realized restaurants use this on me all the time.
Oh, the hospitality industry is arguably the greatest real-world laboratory for social psychology. Researchers wanted to see if verbal mimicry directly affected tipping behavior. They ran an experiment where they instructed waitstaff to take orders in 2 distinctly different ways.
Okay.
The first group of waiters was told to listen to the customer's order and then reply with a polite, enthusiastic affirmation, something like, "Okay, coming right up," or "Great choice, I'll put that in for you."
Very standard, friendly service. That is what you expect when you order a meal.
Very standard. But the second group of waiters was given a completely different script. They were instructed to repeat the customer's order verbatim back to them. If the customer said, "I'll have the Brussels burger, medium rare, with bacon and cheddar and a side of sweet potato fries," the waiter would reply exactly with the Brussels burger, medium rare, with bacon and cheddar and a side of sweet potato fries.
Not just, "I've got it," but literal word-for-word parroting.
Exact repetition. And the financial results were immediate. The waiters who parroted the orders back received tips that were 70% higher than the waiters who simply gave a friendly affirmation.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because here is where it gets really interesting and, well, a little controversial. Doesn't this cross the line into manipulation?
I hear that a lot.
If I sit in a pitch meeting and intentionally copy my client crossing their arms, or if I repeat their sentences back to them like a tape recorder, won't they notice? Won't they think I'm mocking them? It feels a bit like playing a sociopathic game of Simon Says with your career.
That is a very valid, incredibly common concern when people first learn about this. You are worried it feels disingenuous. But the key word you used earlier is the answer to the risk. Subtle.
Right?
It must be subtle. The magic of mimicry works precisely because it bypasses conscious detection and speaks directly to the subconscious. If they consciously notice you are doing it, the spell is broken and it backfires completely. You come off as weird, condescending, or outright mocking. But when done with nuance, it operates on a primal level.
But even if it's subtle, isn't the intent still manipulative? I mean, I'm faking a connection to extract a better deal or a bigger tip.
Well, consider the alternative dynamic. In a tense negotiation, the default state of mind is often adversarial. It's us versus them. I have my rigid interests, you have your rigid interests, and we are fighting over a finite pie. It is a state of psychological threat. When someone behaves like us, our brain unconsciously infers kinship. It lowers the threat level. It transforms the dynamic from a battle across a table into a scenario where an interconnected team is trying to solve a puzzle together. You are necessarily faking a connection. You are using biological cues to clear away the defensive walls so a real connection can happen. You make the other person feel heard, understood, and safe.
Ah, so it's that social glue again. You are literally lowering their heart rate.
Exactly that. When the waiter repeats your complicated burger order word for word, your brain registers a deep, soothing sense of security. It says, this person gets me, they are paying attention, they're on my side. It builds instant trust in a way that great choice simply cannot match because great choice doesn't actually prove they listened.
So if you're stepping into a sales call, a salary negotiation, or even a difficult customer service interaction, don't just passively listen. Actively reflect. Subtly mirroring your counterpart's phrasing, adopting their specific vocabulary, and matching their posture is a scientifically validated method to increase trust and get the deal across the finish line.
Absolutely.
If they speak slowly and deliberately, dial back your own caffeine-fueled pacing. If they use specific industry jargon, weave that same jargon into your replies. You're meeting them where they are, both physically and linguistically.
You are creating an environment of profound psychological safety. But, up to this point, our entire conversation has focused on mimicry on a micro level, like one-on-one interactions, small groups in a dark room, two people at a speed dating table. What happens when we zoom out?
Which takes us to the macro level. If mimicry works on a single date or in a single boardroom negotiation, what happens when millions of people do it all at once? How do massive cultural phenomena actually happen?
Well, we have this deeply ingrained cultural belief that massive success, like a blockbuster movie, a best-selling book, a hit song that dominates the radio, is purely a result of intrinsic quality. We like to think that the market is a pure meritocracy, and the best stuff naturally rises to the top because it is simply better than everything else.
Which feels fair, right?
It feels very fair. Let's look at the ultimate example, Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling's Wizarding series is arguably the biggest publishing phenomenon in human history. We look back at it now and say, well, of course it was a global hit. It is brilliantly written, the world building is immersive, the characters are iconic, but is it really just the undeniable quality of the writing? Or did social influence and the herd mentality play a massive hidden role?
I mean, we know the mythology behind her success. Her manuscript was famously rejected by a dozen different publishers before a small imprint finally took a chance on it. If it was inherently, objectively obvious from page one that it was a billion-dollar cultural property, those 12 publishers wouldn't have passed. Someone would have grabbed it instantly.
That is the crucial piece of evidence. To test how much social influence actually dictates blockbuster success compared to pure intrinsic quality, two sociologists, Matthew Salganik and Duncan Watts, designed a brilliant massive-scale experiment.
How massive?
So we're talking thousands of participants. They built a custom music website. They recruited these thousands of people and asked them to log on, listen to, rate, and download unknown songs by totally obscure bands. These were tracks no one had ever heard of, so there were zero preconceived notions, no existing fandoms, and no marketing budgets influencing the listeners.
So a completely level, sterile playing field.
Yeah.
Pure music against pure music.
Exactly. They split the thousands of participants into different experimental groups. The first group acted completely independently. We can call them the control group. When they logged onto the site, they could see the band names and the song titles, but that was it. They had to click play, listen to the track, and decide entirely for themselves whether they liked it enough to download it.
Okay, so their choices were based purely on the intrinsic quality of the music. Their downloads reflect what human ears actually enjoy when left to their own devices.
Yes. And their download counts gave the researchers a reliable, objective baseline measure of how good each song actually was. But then there was the social influence group. This group's website interface was identical in every way except for one crucial tiny detail. Right next to each song title, they could see a number displaying how many times that specific song had been downloaded by previous users.
Ah, the download counts. Instant, visible social proof.
They could see exactly what the herd was doing. Now, to make this experiment a true masterpiece, the researchers didn't just have one giant social influence world. They created 8 separate parallel worlds.
Wait, 8 different versions of the site.
Yes. The participants in World 1 couldn't see the download counts happening in World 2, and so on. They were distinct ecosystems. The very first few people to log into each world would randomly pick a song to listen to, and their initial downloads would start to tally up on the screen.
And what happened? Did the objectively best songs from the control group rise to the top of all 8 worlds?
Well, if intrinsic quality is the only thing that matters, the best song should have consistently won across the board, right? Good music is good music. But that is not what happened at all. In the social influence worlds, success was wildly unequal and entirely unpredictable.
How so?
A song that became a massive runaway mega hit in World 1 could be a total ignored flop in World 4. Its ultimate success or failure was entirely dependent on what the very first few random users happened to do in that specific world. If an average song got a few early downloads just by sheer luck, the next wave of users logged on, saw those numbers, and thought, oh, this track has 5 downloads already. It must be good.
And they download it without even thinking.
Exactly. They downloaded it, the number grew to 15, the next wave saw the 15, and it created an unstoppable snowball effect.
This reminds me of the parking lot analogy from the source text, which perfectly illustrates the mechanics of this momentum.
Oh, that's a great one. Break that down for us.
So imagine a massive, empty dirt parking lot outside a county fair. There are no painted lines, no parking attendants, just a huge expanse of dirt. The very first car pulls in, and the driver arbitrarily decides to park facing west. It's a completely random choice. A few minutes later, the next car pulls in. They don't really care which way they face, they just want to go to the fair, so they pull in right next to the first car, also facing west, using it as a reference point.
Naturally.
Right. Soon a third car does the same. Before long, the entire dirt lot is filled with hundreds of rows of cars, all perfectly aligned, all facing west. To someone arriving late, it looks like an organized, deliberately planned system. But what if that very first driver had simply decided to park facing south? The entire ecosystem of the lot would look completely different.
That analogy captures the essence of the blockbuster illusion perfectly. If we connect this back to the bigger picture of the business world, predicting hits based purely on intrinsic quality is a fool's errand. And that's because human beings use early adopters as their primary heuristic shortcut. When we are faced with thousands of songs, millions of books, or endless software options, we just don't have the time to evaluate them all. So we look at the charts, we look at the New York Times bestseller lists, we look at the download counts in the App Store.
Quality is just the engine, but social proof is the steering wheel. I mean, the engine absolutely has to work. The song cannot be literal, ear-piercing static. The car has to be able to run. But where it goes and how big it gets is entirely driven by the initial movements of the herd.
You hit the nail on the head. Success is a compounding feedback loop of imitation. The rich get richer. The more popular something appears to be, the more popular it becomes in reality. We outsource our decision-making to the crowd because the crowd is an incredibly efficient, albeit sometimes irrational, filter in a modern world characterized by overwhelming choice.
So if you are an entrepreneur building a startup or a creator launching a podcast or a book, having a great product is merely the baseline entry fee. You cannot just build it in a vacuum and expect the world to beat a path to your door just because it's good. You must aggressively manufacture early, visible momentum.
You have to.
Getting those first 10 visible reviews on Amazon, getting those first 100 downloads on your app, or literally paying people to stand in line outside your pop-up store is exponentially more important than polishing your product features by another 5%. You have to engineer the perception of popularity to trigger the biological feedback loop.
You have to make sure you are that first car in the parking lot, and you have to make absolutely certain that everyone else sees you parking there. Which brings us to a very tricky, practical area of leadership. If social influence is this deeply ingrained and this powerful, how do we handle it inside our own organizations? How do we use it to motivate our teams? And more importantly, how do we stop it from causing catastrophic disasters?
Let's get into that. Because if social influence is what actually drives human behavior, I have to ask, why do leaders and managers still rely on such outdated mechanical tactics? We still rely almost exclusively on carrots and sticks.
It is a massive systemic blind spot in modern management. We default to simple rewards and punishments because they are easy to quantify and easy to administer. We hand out cash bonuses to the employee of the month. We tell our children they can have a bowl of ice cream if they force down their broccoli. But the psychological research demonstrates that while these transactional tactics might yield a temporary spike in compliance, they actively destroy intrinsic motivation in the long run. The source text uses a brilliant, sort of absurd analogy about alien food to explain the mechanics behind this.
Oh, the Zagworts and gallblads. I love this part.
Right. So imagine you are an astronaut stranded on an alien planet, and the local inhabitants serve you a plate with two weird, unrecognizable piles of alien food. Zagworts and gallblads. You have absolutely no idea what either of them taste like. They could be delicious, they could be toxic, but then your alien host points at the plate and says, before you are allowed to eat your Zagworts, you must finish every single one of your gallblads. Instantly, without tasting a thing, what does your brain assume?
Well, I immediately assume the gallblads taste like absolute garbage. Like, why else would you have to hold the Zagworts hostage to force me to eat them? The Zagworts must be the dessert, the good stuff.
Exactly. When we use external rewards to drive behavior, we send a subtle, unconscious signal about the inherent value of the activity itself. When you pay a child with ice cream to eat their vegetables, you are definitively signaling that vegetables are inherently bad, an awful chore that requires financial compensation to endure.
That makes so much sense.
And when a corporation relies heavily on Employee of the Month bonuses or strict attendance points to get people to show up on time, they are broadcasting that the work itself is miserable and has no intrinsic value. You are literally paying them a penalty fee to suffer through it.
Wait, let me challenge this, because businesses use bonuses and rewards constantly. Sales commissions, quarterly performance bonuses, profit sharing. Are you suggesting a CEO should just scrap their entire commission structure and hope everyone works hard for the love of the game? I mean, people have mortgages to pay.
No, I'm not suggesting you stop paying people fairly. Money is a baseline necessity, of course. If you don't pay enough, people will leave. But if your goal is to build a culture of true self-sustaining excellence and innovation, bribing your team won't get you there. A much more powerful, scientifically sound leadership tool is modeled behavior.
Give me an example.
Let's go back to the child and the broccoli. If a parent actually wants their kid to develop a taste for broccoli, bribing them is counterproductive. The parent needs to sit down at the table, put a massive pile of broccoli on their own plate, and visibly, enthusiastically eat it. If the kid sees the parent genuinely enjoying the vegetables, their mirror neurons and conformity instincts kick in. They want to participate in what the parent is enjoying.
Monkey see, monkey do.
It all comes back to the monkeys. In a corporate environment, a leader must visibly model the exact behavior they want to see. If you want your team to be highly collaborative, you cannot just offer a year-end bonus for teamwork while you sit isolated in your corner office barking unilateral orders. You have to be visibly, publicly collaborative yourself. High performance, curiosity, and hard work have to be established as the highly visible social norm of the tribe, not just a metric tied to a paycheck.
But there is a dark side to all this conformity, isn't there? If everyone is just copying the leader or copying each other to maintain social harmony, you get the exact opposite of innovation. You get an echo chamber.
You get groupthink. And groupthink is incredibly dangerous. It occurs when the deep biological desire for harmony and conformity overrides a group's ability to critically analyze a situation. Historically, some of the most catastrophic decisions ever made were driven by rooms full of brilliant people silently conforming to the first vocalized opinion.
Really? Like what?
Think of the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, the Bay of Pigs invasion, or the escalation of the Vietnam War. In many of these historical tragedies, there were experts sitting at the table who had serious, valid doubts, but they kept their mouths shut because the momentum of the group was clearly moving in another direction.
It's the ash line experiment playing out with life and death consequences. You see the engineering data that says the O-rings might fail in the cold weather, but the boss at the head of the table says, we are go for launch. And the guy next to him says, go. And suddenly the spotlight is on you and you just say go too, even though your eyes are screaming that it's line A.
That is exactly what happens.
How on earth do we defeat that impulse?
Managers and leaders have to intentionally, structurally break the imitation loop. If you are leading a crucial meeting, the absolute worst thing you can do is state your own opinion first and then ask the room, does everyone agree? Because inevitably, everyone will just nod. You have structured the environment to demand conformity.
So what should they do instead?
Instead, you should use private voting. Have everyone write their thoughts or their estimates down on a piece of paper before anyone is allowed to speak. That way, the monkey see part of the equation is completely removed. If they can't see what the others are doing, they can't imitate it, and you get their actual unvarnished opinion.
Or you could use the strategy mentioned in the text designating an official devil's advocate.
That is a phenomenal tool. Officially assign one person in the room the specific, stated job of disagreeing with the consensus. Tell them, your role today is to find every single flaw in this plan. If it is their explicit job to poke holes, it completely removes the social penalty of being the dissenter. They aren't ruining the harmony, they are just doing their job. And by breaking the unanimous front, it makes it psychologically safe for other people in the room to voice their hidden concerns too.
So if you were running a team, audit your company's culture today. Are you relying on bribes and alien food to get performance? Or are you creating an environment where excellence is the highly visible social norm? And tactically, in your next strategy meeting, make sure the most junior person in the room speaks first to prevent them from just mimicking the boss. Take away the blueprint for conformity so you can actually benefit from their real ideas.
It is all about how you design the environment. Because as we have explored from every angle today, the environment dictates the behavior. Whether it is monkeys eating dyed corn in South Africa, negotiators trying to leverage millions of dollars across a table, or a pop song snowballing its way up the charts, we are constantly, relentlessly outsourcing our decision-making to the crowd.
It's just how we're built.
Exactly. Influence is not just a psychological quirk. It is a biological imperative and a highly efficient social shortcut. The most successful entrepreneurs, leaders, and communicators understand this reality. They don't waste energy fighting this human instinct. They design their products, their pitches, and their meeting rooms to leverage it.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive? It means you need to take ownership of your environment. Recognize when you are being swept up by the herd and actively construct the visible social proof necessary to help your own ideas thrive.
Well said.
But here is the ultimate paradox to chew on. If we are all biologically hardwired to copy each other, why do we spend so much time, energy, and money desperately trying to prove how unique and different we are? Next time, we'll explore why you absolutely hate it when someone shows up to a party wearing your exact same outfit and what that deep drive for differentiation means for your business. Until then, stay curious.
So have you ever been at a restaurant, fully prepared to order your absolute favorite meal? Like, maybe it's a perfectly cooked steak you've been thinking about all week.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Mouth is already watering.
Right, but then the person sitting right next to you, maybe your friend or your coworker, orders that exact same thing.
Yep.
And suddenly, without even thinking, like a switch just flips in your brain. You close the menu and go, actually, I'll have the roasted chicken.
You just completely pivot.
Completely. And I mean, why do we do that? Because your taste buds didn't change that 5-second window.
No, the steak is still going to be delicious.
Exactly. The steak didn't magically become bad.
Yeah.
Yet just the simple act of someone else claiming that choice suddenly makes you want it entirely less.
It's fascinating, right?
It really is, because we walk around believing we are these fiercely independent, rational decision makers charting our own course. But there's this hidden, incredibly powerful psychological drive dictating our choices. It's the drive to fundamentally not be like the person sitting next to us.
Right. Yeah, and it really challenges the entire premise of how we typically understand human influence.
How so?
Well, we're conditioned to think of influence as this magnetic pull, right? Like a force that draws people together into crowds or trends and, shared behaviors.
Like the bandwagon effect.
Exactly, the bandwagon effect. But what you just described at the restaurant, that is influence acting as a repellent.
A repellence.
Yeah. The choice of another person didn't pull you in, it practically pushed you into an entirely different set of behaviors. And in this deep dive, we're going to unpack exactly why that happens.
Which is going to be so useful for anyone listening who is, say, interested in business or entrepreneurship.
Oh, it's the ultimate cheat code. Because if you want to understand the mechanics of how we build products, manage teams, or even just construct our own identities, you really have to understand the architecture of this repelling force.
It's funny you mentioned the architecture of identity because I see this play out constantly, not just in restaurants, but like in how people develop their entire personalities starting from childhood.
Oh, childhood is the perfect place to start looking at this.
Right. And there's this story in the source material about Morgan Bryan, the U.S. women's national team soccer player.
Yeah, the 12-year-old regional team story.
Exactly. So she's 12 years old, sitting at a computer screen in her friend's house in Florida, and she's scanning the rosters for the Regional Olympic Development Program.
Highly competitive stuff.
Super competitive.
Yeah.
So she looks at the A team roster. Her name isn't there.
Ouch.
Yeah. She checks the B team. Nothing. Then she scrolls down to the C team, and she realizes that every single one of her older club teammates, like all 10 of them, made one of those teams.
You accept her.
Except her. She was the only one left behind. And that entire summer, her group of friends basically packed up and went to the regional camp in Alabama, and she was just stuck at home.
Which, is a devastating moment for a 12-year-old kid.
Oh, totally crushing.
But the statistical reality of what happens next in cases like hers, that is where the psychology gets truly profound. Because Morgan Bryan, despite being the one left behind, goes on to become a wildly successful professional athlete.
2 World Cups, right?
Multiple World Cups. And when you look at the data across elite sports, it's staggering. Younger siblings, or later-borns, massively over-index as elite, high-performing athletes.
Wait, really? Like statistically?
Yes. They are highly overrepresented compared to firstborns.
See, I'm struggling with this part of the premise, though, because if we look at this through the lens of evolutionary biology, aren't we hardwired for survival and efficiency?
Oh, yeah.
So if an older sibling plays soccer, gets all this praise, secures parental attention, and establishes this, winning formula, shouldn't evolution program the younger sibling to just copy that exact blueprint?
You would think so.
Right. Why risk venturing into the unknown or pushing through such massive adversity just to be different? The math of taking the hard road just doesn't add up to me.
Well, that assumes the winning formula is still available to be won.
Oh, interesting.
Right. It ignores the actual resource economy of a family unit. In evolutionary biology, there's this concept known as niche creation.
Niche creation. Okay, break that down for us.
So let's look at early human tribal dynamics, or honestly, even just a modern nuclear family. Parental time, energy, financial resources, they're all finite.
Right, there's only so much to go around.
Exactly. When a firstborn child arrives, they basically have a monopoly on those resources, and they usually claim the most obvious, culturally rewarded paths.
Like being the smart one or the responsible one.
Right, academic achievement, fulfilling the parents' direct expectations. By the time the second child arrives, that territory is fully occupied.
They are essentially staring at a plot of land that already has a house built on it.
That is a perfect way to put it. And if the younger sibling tries to build their house on that exact same plot, if they try to compete in the exact same arena of being the responsible academic one, they're entering a battle they're mathematically destined to lose.
Because of the head start.
Exactly. At least initially, the older sibling has a 2-year, 3-year, or even 5-year head start in cognitive and physical development.
So it's not a fair fight.
Not at all. Direct competition for the exact same resource stream is biologically inefficient. So, the younger sibling's unconscious mind kind of recognizes this trap.
And what does it do?
It naturally diverges. They seek out an uncontested resource stream. They find a new domain where they can uniquely stand out and command parental attention without direct comparison.
Oh, wow. So they become the athlete, the comedian, the rebel,
the risk taker.
Precisely.
That completely recontextualizes sibling rivalry for me. I mean, it isn't just kids bickering over toys. It's a literal unconscious survival strategy to secure emotional and physical resources.
Yeah, it's life or death in the biological sense.
It makes me think of Frank Sulloway's research.
Oh, the historian, yeah.
Right, the idea that laterborns are historically the ones who lead scientific and political revolutions.
Yeah.
Because their entire psychological framework is built on challenging the established occupied order.
They literally cannot survive by maintaining the status quo, so they have to dismantle it or just find a completely new frontier.
Darwin himself was a laterborn, wasn't he?
Darwin was a later born. Copernicus was a later born. They had to carve out intellectual niches that just didn't exist yet. Because if we connect this to the bigger picture, distinction is survival. Distinction provides definition.
What do you mean?
Well, if you are entirely indistinguishable from the people closest to you, you don't just lack a personality. In an evolutionary sense, you lack a reason for the tribe to invest in you.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
We need boundaries to understand our own existence, and diverging from our immediate peers is exactly how we draw those boundaries.
So taking this out of the family unit and dropping it into, say, a modern business environment, the implications for leadership here are massive. Because I think about how often managers try to clone their best employees. Like, you hire a sharp, ambitious junior copywriter, and the instinct is to pair them with your senior copywriter and say, just watch what they do and mimic their process.
Which is so common.
But based on this biological drive for niche creation we're talking about, that has to be the worst possible management strategy.
It absolutely is. You are effectively triggering the younger sibling trap.
Right.
You're forcing the junior employee to compete on occupied territory where they have a massive developmental disadvantage.
Because the senior writer already owns that space.
Exactly. So their unconscious mind will react. It'll either disengage entirely because the path to unique recognition is blocked, or they will start actively rebelling against the senior employee's methods just to create a sense of distinct identity.
So a manager has to essentially act like the environment and carve out a new ecological niche for them.
Right. You have to give them their own space.
You give the junior employee a completely different vertical. You say, look, the senior writer owns the email campaigns, but I want you to completely own the social media voice. This is your uncontested territory.
Yes. You give them their own Olympic development team to strive for.
That's such a great takeaway.
It is. That is how you activate the drive for distinction productively rather than destructively. But what we need to explore next is what happens when that hard-won distinction is suddenly threatened.
Oh, because the drive doesn't just turn off once we find our niche.
No, not at all. It morphs into a fierce protectionism of our identity.
It reminds me of how adults treat their hobbies. Have you noticed this? You never see two best friends simultaneously decide to become obsessed with, like, sourdough bread baking.
Yeah.
One friend claims it becomes their thing, and then the other friend suddenly gets really into pickling vegetables or brewing kombucha.
We refuse to encroach on each other's territory.
We really do. And when someone does encroach, the emotional reaction is intensely negative. It brings up that famous Yogi Berra paradox about a popular restaurant.
Oh, I love this quote. Nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded.
Yes. It is such a brilliant observation, masked as a joke.
It really is. It perfectly captures the neurological friction we experience when our sense of uniqueness is hijacked.
Because we want the things we like to be recognized as good, right?
Yeah, we want validation that we made high-quality choices, but we absolutely do not want everyone else to have them.
Okay, let's ground this in a scenario that I think everyone listening has felt in some capacity. Imagine you are walking through a city and you duck into a small, independent art gallery.
Okay, setting the scene.
And you see this stunning, limited edition abstract painting. It really speaks to you. The aesthetic, the colors, the mood, it just feels like a perfect external representation of your internal taste.
You feel seen by the art.
Exactly. And the gallery owner tells you it's a limited run of 15 prints. So you put down a deposit, feeling incredibly sophisticated. But a few days later, before you pick up the piece, your neighbor invites you over for drinks. You walk into their living room, and hanging right there over their sofa is the exact same painting.
Oh no. Out of millions of pieces of art produced globally, they chose that specific one.
Yes. And the moment you see it, the painting instantly loses its appeal for you. Like, the physical object hasn't changed at all. The brushstrokes are identical. The colors haven't faded.
But the psychological value drops to zero.
To zero. You don't even want to hang it in your house anymore. Why does our brain react with such visceral disgust to someone sharing our exact preference?
Because fundamentally, you aren't just buying a canvas with pigment on it, you are purchasing a signal.
A signal.
Yeah. To understand the severity of this reaction, we really have to dive into signaling theory, particularly within the context of American cultural conditioning.
Okay, what does American culture have to do with it?
Well, the United States places an almost mythic premium on individualism, autonomy, and nonconformity.
Oh, definitely.
Our cultural narratives idolize the lone cowboy, the rogue detective, the disruptive tech founder. The ultimate societal nightmare, which you see represented in literature like 1984, Brave New World, is becoming an indistinguishable cog in a totalitarian machine.
So we are conditioned from birth to be absolutely terrified of being viewed as generic.
Exactly. Therefore, our consumption habits, the cars we drive, the specific cut of our jeans, the art on our walls, they act as a highly calibrated, silent communication system.
Like sociological flare guns.
I love that. Yes, sociological flare guns.
Yeah.
They're constantly firing these signals into the sky to tell the tribe who we are. I am sophisticated, I am outdoorsy, I am avant-garde.
So when you selected that painting, you were purchasing a signal of refined, unique taste.
Right, and when your neighbor hangs the exact same painting, they are stepping on your frequency. They are broadcasting your signal. And by doing so, they dilute the efficacy of your identity. You are no longer the one person with a unique aesthetic. You are just a participant in a localized trend.
You know what this reminds me of? It's like picking custom ringtones back in the early 2000s.
Oh my gosh, yes.
People would spend hours, like literal hours, digging through obscure indie music forums just to find the perfect 15-second audio clip to serve as their ringtone.
Guilty as charged.
Right. And it wasn't just about liking the song. The value was in the labor of finding something that absolutely no one else had.
The hunt was part of the value.
Exactly. And the second you were on the subway and you heard someone else's phone ring with your obscure song, you went home and changed yours immediately.
Immediately.
You didn't suddenly think the song was bad. You were just furious that the exclusivity, the association was compromised.
That is a perfect analogy, and the labor you mentioned is a crucial point here. Pierre Bourdieu, the French sociologist, he talked extensively about this concept of cultural capital.
Cultural capital.
Yeah. When you find an obscure song or an obscure artist, you are demonstrating high cultural capital. You put in the work to discover something off the beaten path. But when someone else easily adopts it after it becomes slightly more popular, they are stealing your cultural capital without putting in the labor of discovery.
That feels like a violation.
It genuinely does. Neurologically, this triggers a real threat response.
Wait, really? Like in the brain?
Yes. Studies scanning the brain during moments of social exclusion or identity threat show activity in the anterior cingulate cortex, which, amazingly, is the exact same region that processes physical pain.
Are you serious?
Having your identity hijacked actually physically hurts.
That is wild, and it creates a massive existential tightrope for businesses, especially those selling identity-driven products.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, fashion houses, boutique tech hardware, craft breweries, they all rely on early adopters who buy the product specifically for its obscure signaling value.
Right.
But businesses eventually need to scale to survive. And the moment you scale too fast and everyone has the product, the early adopters experience that actual neurological pain you just talked about.
And what do? They drop the brand entirely.
They just abandon ship.
Yeah, and we have seen this cycle destroy massive legacy brands. Look at what happened to Burberry in the early 2000s.
Oh, the plaid pattern.
Right, the iconic, highly exclusive check pattern. It was a signal of upper-class British heritage. But then they licensed a pattern too aggressively.
They put it on everything.
Everything. Suddenly, the check pattern was on cheap baseball caps, dog umbrellas, you name it. It was adopted by the mass market and became heavily associated with chav culture in the UK.
So the signal changed entirely.
Completely. The original core demographic, the wealthy elites who used the brand to signal exclusivity, they fled immediately because the signal was no longer transmitting heritage, it was transmitting ubiquity.
So Burberry basically broke their own flare gun.
Exactly. Burberry had to spend a decade aggressively buying back licenses and restructuring their entire creative direction just to survive the overexposure.
Because if everyone has it, it ceases to mean anything.
Exactly.
But, this is where the psychology takes a really strange, almost contradictory turn for me. Well, I'm trying to square this intense hatred of being copied with the reality of how we actually live our lives.
Okay.
Because we live in a society of billions of people.
Yeah.
We buy mass-produced iPhones, we shop at Zara, we watch the exact same Netflix shows. If our ego is so fragile that seeing someone with the same painting sends us into a spiral, why do we participate in mass culture at all?
It's a fair question.
Right. Why not just weave our own clothes and make our own bags and forage for our own food? The math of this illusion just isn't adding up for me.
Well, you are hitting on the fundamental paradox of modern human existence.
Okay, glad I'm not the only one confused.
No, it's a huge paradox. We are essentially caught between two opposing evolutionary forces. On one side, like we discussed, we have the drive for niche creation and distinction.
Right, the younger sibling syndrome.
Yes. But on the other side, we have an equally powerful, incredibly ancient drive for tribal assimilation.
Because being cast out of the tribe in early human history meant certain death.
Exactly. You couldn't survive on your own. So we have this deep psychological need to belong, to conform, and to feel the safety of the herd.
So we're getting pulled in opposite directions.
Constantly. And this tension is best explained by Marilyn Brewer's optimal distinctiveness theory.
Optimal distinctiveness. So meaning we are trying to find, like, the exact perfect temperature of porridge. Not too unique to be outcasts, but not too similar to be invisible.
That's exactly it. We want to assimilate at the macro level for safety, but differentiate at the micro level for status.
Macro safety, micro status. I like that.
But here's the catch. Because true, absolute uniqueness in our consumption habits is mathematically impossible in a globalized economy, our brains have to deploy a cognitive shield.
What kind of shield?
We perform incredible mental gymnastics to convince ourselves that we are standing out, even when we're doing the exact same thing as millions of other people.
We manufacture an illusion of difference.
We manufacture the illusion, yes.
There is this brilliant, almost hilarious example of this cognitive shield in action from the research. Picture a mid-level corporate lawyer, right? And he's venting to a friend.
Oh, okay.
He's complaining about the younger associates at his firm. He says, "These kids are so predictable. The second they get their first big year-end bonus, they all march down to the dealership and buy a BMW. They have no originality. They just want to fit in with the partner track."
Classic projecting.
Right. And the friend listens to this whole rant, looks out the window at the parking lot and says, "Wait, don't you drive a BMW?"
And what does the lawyer say?
Without a hint of irony, he replies, "Yeah, but mine is navy blue. All of theirs are silver."
It is the perfect encapsulation of cognitive dissonance resolution.
It's so funny because it's so true.
The lawyer completely ignores the overwhelming, massive similarities. He ignores the brand, the exact make, the $70,000 price tag, the German engineering, and the specific socioeconomic signaling of owning a luxury sedan.
He just weighs all of that away.
Waved away, just so he can hyper-focus on the one microscopic variable, the paint color, that allows him to maintain his narrative of individual distinction.
I see this constantly with fashion, too. Think about the Longchamp nylon tote bags, the Le Pliage.
Yes, the ubiquitous bag.
For a solid 5-year stretch, they were absolutely everywhere in major cities. Like millions of women carrying the exact same mass-produced nylon bag with the little leather flap.
Everywhere you looked.
But if you stopped 2 women on the street carrying them and asked, "Do you feel like you are copying each other?" they would look at you like you were crazy.
Oh, they would be offended.
They would say, "What are you talking about? Hers is navy with a short handle, and mine is black with a long handle." They are entirely different aesthetic statements.
We satisfy our thirst for difference using our minds alone. We use a psychological magnifying glass on the tiny variations, and we use a blindfold for the overwhelming similarities.
I honestly do this as a parent.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You walk into a daycare center, right? And there is a wall of 30 paper plates with dry macaroni glued to them.
A classic craft.
To any objective, rational outside observer, it is a wall of identical, messy pasta crafts. But then you find your kid's plate.
And suddenly, it's a masterpiece.
Suddenly, you see the genius. You see how they angled the rigatoni slightly to the left, which clearly demonstrates a unique avant-garde understanding of spatial dynamics.
Of course.
To the parent, that specific plate of macaroni is a one-of-a-kind masterpiece.
Dog owners do the exact same thing.
Oh, absolutely.
You go to a park with, say, 6 golden retriever puppies. They're genetically engineered to look identical. They literally look like a glitch in the Matrix.
Just copy-pasted dogs.
But the owner will spend 20 minutes explaining to you how their dog's right ear flops at a 45-degree angle instead of a 50-degree angle, making them utterly distinct.
But we have to ask ourselves, why does the brain spend so much caloric energy maintaining this illusion? Because it can't just be vanity, right?
No, it isn't just vanity. It is a highly functional defense mechanism.
How so?
If we did not have this cognitive trick, navigating an industrialized society would induce constant, paralyzing existential dread.
Existential dread.
Yes. Just imagine if every time you merged onto the highway in your Honda Civic, or put on a pair of Levi's jeans, or ordered a meal at a chain restaurant, your brain fully processed the reality that millions of other humans were executing the exact same behavior in the exact same sequence.
Oh, wow. That would be heavy.
You would feel entirely erased. You'd feel like a meaningless speck of dust.
You would feel like the cog in the machine.
Precisely. This illusion allows us to safely participate in mass culture. It allows us to enjoy the efficiencies, the shared infrastructure, and the social bonding of a massive society while quietly maintaining the internal narrative that we are the main character of our own distinct story.
That is profound.
Yeah.
And when you look at this through a business or entrepreneurial lens, it completely shifts the strategy for product design.
It changes everything.
Because you realize you don't actually need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to offer a completely bespoke, built-from-scratch product to satisfy a customer's deep psychological need for distinction.
No, not at all. Mass customization becomes the ultimate cheat code.
Mass customization. Explain how that works.
You basically offer a standardized, highly efficient core product, but you introduce a thin layer of microvariables on top.
Oh, like Apple. Apple executed this flawlessly during the iPod era.
Yes, perfect example.
Because from an engineering standpoint, Apple was selling millions of identical pieces of hardware running the exact same operating system. But they released the iPod Nano in a vast array of bright metallic colors.
Right, so you bought the green one, your gym partner had the silver one, and your roommate had the pink one.
And you felt like you were expressing your unique personality, even though the internal circuitry was mass-produced in the exact same factory in China?
Nike does this too with their Nike By You program.
Oh, the custom shoes.
Yeah. You are buying a standard Air Force One silhouette, which millions of people own, but because you picked the color of the laces and the swoosh yourself, you feel like a sneaker designer.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
But honestly, Starbucks might be the purest distillation of this psychology in the modern world.
Oh, for sure. Think about the Starbucks line.
Right. You wait in a line of 20 people. You are all buying the exact same mass-produced dark roast beans shipped in from the same global supply chain.
Yep.
But the moment you get to the front of the line, the barista takes a Sharpie and writes your name on the cup. And suddenly the transaction shifts.
It's totally personalized.
It is no longer just a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It's your cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It is a highly affordable daily microdose of uniqueness.
And we gladly pay a massive premium for that feeling.
We really do.
We will pay $4 or $5 for a few cents worth of hot bean water because the true product being sold isn't caffeine. It is the validated illusion of difference.
The validated illusion of difference. That's a great phrase.
However, as we analyze this drive to stand out, it is critical that we don't fall into the trap of assuming this is a universal human truth.
Oh, wait. It's not universal?
No, the desire for uniqueness and the anxiety around conformity is heavily contextual. It is profoundly dictated by social class.
See, this was the most jarring realization for me when diving into the research. Because we are so marinated in this cultural narrative that everyone wants to be a rebel.
Right, that everyone wants to stand out from the crowd.
Exactly. But the data reveals that this is actually a highly specific, localized mindset. There's this fascinating piece of research known as the Start a Car Club study that completely shatters the idea that uniqueness is universally desired.
The methodology of that study is just so elegant.
Yeah.
Because it isolates the variable of social class perfectly.
Walk us through it.
So the researchers presented a standardized scenario to two fundamentally different groups of people. The scenario is basically this. Imagine you just spent weeks researching and finally bought a brand new car. It's exactly the model and color you wanted. But a few days later, you find out that a friend of yours went to the dealership and bought the exact same car. Same make, same model, same trim. How do you feel?
So they first presented this scenario to a group of MBA students.
Yes.
Who are individuals that are generally tracking toward middle or upper class, highly competitive corporate environments.
Right.
And the reaction from the MBAs was visceral. They were furious. They felt irritated, violated, and betrayed.
They genuinely felt like their friend had stolen their identity.
Which tracks with everything we've talked about so far. The fact that someone else in their immediate social circle owned the same vehicle
completely ruined the purchase for them. Their car suddenly felt generic,
But then the researchers took the exact same scenario and presented it to a group of firefighters.
representing a more working-class demographic and a fundamentally different workplace environment.
Exactly. And the firefighters' reaction couldn't have been more polarized.
They loved it. They didn't feel threatened at all. They actually felt validated. One of the firefighters literally responded to the scenario by saying, "Awesome, let's start a car club."
I love that response. The idea that their friend bought the exact same car was a source of camaraderie, not competition.
It really highlights a profound divergence, doesn't it?
It reveals a profound difference in how different socioeconomic classes construct the concept of the self.
A self. Okay.
Yeah, Hazel Marcus, who is a pioneer in cultural psychology, she talks about independent versus interdependent self-construals.
Okay, so what's the difference?
In middle and upper class environments, children are conditioned from birth to view themselves as independent entities. They are raised to be, for lack of a better term, special snowflakes.
Right. The cultural emphasis is heavily weighted toward autonomy, self-expression, and standing out.
Exactly. It's the constant curation of identity from childhood.
Like, what is your favorite color? Do you want to play the cello or the oboe? Which highly specific extracurricular activity are you going to specialize in?
Right. And the subtext is always, your value in this socioeconomic bracket comes from your ability to differentiate yourself from your peers.
Precisely because in a corporate white-collar environment, differentiation is how you secure resources.
Yes, it is how you get the promotion over the 20 other MBAs in your cohort. You have to stand out to survive.
But in working-class environments, the survival metrics are historically entirely different.
Completely different. Success and quite literally physical safety in blue-collar or industrial environments depends on solidarity. It depends on community and mutual reliance.
Because if you are a firefighter, your life depends on your team functioning as a cohesive unit.
Exactly. If you are working on a factory floor, your leverage comes from the union, the collective.
Let me push back on this just a little bit, though.
Sure.
Because it's easy for us to sit here and say it's a noble difference in cultural values.
Yeah.
But is it possible this is just a resource constraint issue?
Like a money thing.
Yeah. Maybe working class folks just can't afford the rare limited edition art prints or the bespoke custom suits. Maybe if the firefighters had hedge fund money, they would be buying one-of-a-kind sports cars and getting furious at their friends for copying them too.
It's a completely valid critique, and honestly, it's one the researchers anticipated.
And what do they find?
The data proves it is not merely a matter of bank accounts. It is deeply ingrained cultural conditioning.
How do they know that?
Well, if you observe the parking lots of different socioeconomic spaces, the pattern holds regardless of the price of the vehicle.
Oh, like where people shop.
Right.
Yeah.
Go to a Walmart parking lot. You'll see a high concentration of very similar makes and models of cars. People are clustering around popular, reliable, shared choices.
Okay.
Now, go to a high-end luxury shopping mall parking lot. It is a kaleidoscope of diversity. You see 30 different makes and models, rare custom colors, specialized trims. The wealthy shoppers are actively seeking out vehicles that differentiate them from the person parked in the very next spot.
That's fascinating. And you're saying even within a product category where money isn't an obstacle, the working class preference leans toward the popular choice.
Yes. If you look at working class consumers buying flat screen TVs or appliances, they actively seek out the model that everyone else is buying. They look for the best seller.
Because for an interdependent self-construal, the fact that everyone else is buying it is the ultimate proof of value.
Exactly. It means it is reliable. It means it has the endorsement of the community.
And standing out, or trying to act like you have uniquely refined taste that separates you from your peers, that's probably viewed with deep suspicion in those environments.
Oh, very much so. It signals that you think you are better than the group, which actually threatens the cohesion of the community.
You know, you can actually see this psychology weaponized, or at least optimized, in the advertising world.
Oh, advertising agencies know this intimately.
If you track how agencies write ad copy for these different demographics, it is staggering how they shift the messaging.
Give us an example.
Well, when an ad agency is targeting a high-end, middle to upper class demographic, the language is entirely engineered around distinction.
Right.
The voiceover will literally say things like, "See the difference," or "break the mold," or for the unique individual. They are quite literally selling the promise of separation.
But when that exact same agency is pitching a product, say a pickup truck or a brand of beer, to a working class demographic, The language of separation disappears entirely.
It vanishes.
The messaging shifts to community, shared experience, and tradition. The truck your father drove, the beer America trusts. Built for us.
They aren't pitching separation, they're pitching inclusion.
Exactly. They are validating the consumer's desire to be part of the trusted herd.
It just proves that unique is not a universally recognized virtue. It is a culturally conditioned preference.
Yes, it is.
And the takeaway for anyone trying to launch a product, write a marketing campaign, or even just lead a diverse team of people is that you absolutely must understand the cultural background of your audience.
It's non-negotiable.
Because if you are speaking to a working-class demographic and you come out with a flashy campaign telling them to stand out from the crowd and be a rebel, you aren't inspiring them. You're actively asking them to violate their deepest cultural norms.
You might actually alienate the exact people you're trying to reach.
You have to map your communication to their psychological architecture.
What's fascinating here is that for one demographic, doing the exact same thing as everyone else is a waking nightmare that threatens their sense of self.
Right.
But for another demographic, doing the same thing as everyone else is a deeply comforting validation that they belong to a reliable, cohesive community.
It really reframes how we analyze every single decision we make throughout the day. I mean, we are constantly navigating this massive invisible web of influence.
We truly are.
We love to think we are lone wolves making purely rational choices in a vacuum, entirely immune to the opinions of others. But we're also not mindless sheep, just blindly following the herd without any critical thought.
No, we are constantly walking a delicate tightrope. We are navigating the profound tension between the safety, warmth, and validation of the herd and the pride, definition, and ego of the individual.
Distinction isn't just about vanity or trying to look cool.
No, it is a vital psychological tool. Whether we differentiate by completely abandoning a sport because our older sibling claimed it, or we differentiate by aggressively convincing ourselves that our navy blue car makes us a fundamentally different human being than the guy driving the silver car.
We are actively using our choices to define the borders of our identity.
Yes.
Which brings us right back to that Starbucks coffee cup. The genius of modern consumerism is that it has essentially commodified the tightrope.
That's a great way to summarize it.
When you hand over that $5,
Yeah.
you are buying a momentary resolution to the tension. You are standing in a massive line of people participating in the safety of the herd, but the name on the cup gives you the micro distinction you crave.
It is a brilliant, affordable reminder that you are distinct, even when you are doing exactly what everyone else is doing.
So next time you make a choice, whether it's the clothes you pull out of your closet in the morning, the car you decide to drive, or even the specific way you modify your lunch order, take a second and look at the invisible forces pushing against you.
Ask yourself why you're doing it.
Exactly. Ask yourself, did you choose it purely because you love it? Or did you choose it to prove you aren't like someone else? We've spent this entire conversation exploring how we actively maneuver to avoid doing what others do, simply to protect our uniqueness. But we've been assuming the people we are avoiding are our peers, our neighbors, our friends.
Right, the people close to us.
But what happens when the people copying your behavior aren't just random strangers, but groups of people you actively, vehemently despise? What happens to your identity and your choices when doing the popular thing actually threatens your reputation and aligns you with your enemies? That is a fascinating psychological frontier for you to explore on your own until our next deep dive.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.